Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. In the midst of numerous feudal dynasties, people know more about the Qing Dynasty because it is the closest one to the present era, and there are many materials and historical facts available for reference. The Qing Dynasty experienced both the prosperous times of the Cixi and Qianlong reigns and the decline that ultimately led to its downfall. People's understanding of the Qing Dynasty largely comes from films and television dramas. In these films and dramas, the people of the Qing Dynasty are often portrayed as wearing luxurious clothing and having beautiful faces, but these are all creations of directors and actors. In reality, we can explore whether Manchu women dressed in splendid attire in their daily lives and possessed striking appearances. During the late Qing Dynasty, cameras entered China, but those who could afford photography were mostly high-ranking officials and the wealthy. Fortunately, there was a French photographer at that time who wandered through the streets and alleys, taking many photos that recorded the true social aspect of the late Qing Dynasty. This French photographer's name was Albert, born in France in 1860. Due to extreme poverty in his family, Albert endured hunger and deprivation during his childhood. At the age of 10, he witnessed his mother's death from starvation, which instilled in him a strong desire for wealth. When Albert grew up, he ventured to South Africa to engage in gold mining and successfully made a fortune. After accumulating wealth, Albert's experiences of poverty in his youth, combined with the unrest across the world at that time, fostered pacifist thoughts within him. To practice his ideals and beliefs of peace, Albert spent a considerable sum hiring a team of photographers and traveled the world to record various societies' customs and situations. He hoped to use this approach to awaken people's inner thoughts on peace. Albert's global journey lasted for more than 20 years, during which he and his team took over 70,000 photographs, later stored in his archive and became valuable materials for studying the real aspects of that era. In 1909, Albert and his team arrived in China, and they traveled extensively through cities from north to south, capturing the true social conditions of the late Qing Dynasty. Without these precious photo records, we would have to rely on the accounts of our predecessors and historical books to understand that period. However, no matter how detailed the descriptions might be, they would not be as impactful as photographs. Moreover, historical books mainly record the lives of emperors and nobles, with little mention of common people's daily lives. Therefore, while Albert's photographs may not possess high artistic value, their historical significance is immeasurable. In Albert's lens, every corner of the Qing Dynasty appeared in a lifeless twilight. The streets of Beijing were not as clean and tidy as portrayed in films, the buildings along the roads were grand, but the roads themselves were bumpy and muddy. The passage of vehicles and pedestrians left deep tracks, as if the environment was covered in a layer of dust. In rainy weather, the roads must have been terribly muddy. It could be said that the roads of Beijing at that time were even worse than the rural dirt roads of the previous century. Various vendors lined the streets, but their stalls appeared very rudimentary. In that era of hardship, these vendors struggled for survival. The common people on the streets were mostly covered in patches, wearing ragged clothes as they toiled for a living. Yet, no matter how hard they worked, they often struggled to fill their hungry stomachs. Barefoot beggars and children could be seen everywhere, their eyes revealing unspeakable despair. In stark contrast to the impoverished commoners were the upper-class individuals of the time. Noble Manchu women, dressed in splendid attire, walked the streets followed by servants. They wore elaborate Manchu hairstyles, and their feet were clad in the traditional platform shoes. However, their appearance was far from the glamorous portrayal of TV stars, and both their physique and countenance exuded a sense of stagnation. The officials' carriages and sedan chairs passed by on the road, followed by a large number of attendants enjoying luxuries that ordinary people could only dream of. It can be said that the entire society at that time was permeated with a sense of lifelessness, a numb and soulless atmosphere. Since 1840, the Qing government gradually became a tool of exploitation by foreign powers through repeated defeats in wars. The corrupt government was unable to resist external threats and could only cede territories and pay reparations to survive. These huge indemnities were borne by the common people of that time, since the upper echelons of the government, being exempt from labor, would not contribute. At that time, many farmers did not own their own land and could only work as tenants for landlords. With little knowledge, these farmers had no other option but to engage in farming, leading lives of exploitation and oppression day after day, to the point where they became like soulless walking corpses. Many desperate and impoverished people chose to rebel, and coupled with other natural disasters at the time, countless beggars and refugees emerged in the country. Among these beggars and refugees were many orphan children, their only possession being tattered clothes with holes, and not even a decent pair of shoes. Lucky beggars could barely survive by begging, but those less fortunate ended up as frozen corpses by the roadside. Compared to the struggling masses, Empress Dowager Cixi lived an extremely extravagant life in the imperial palace. She had a fondness for the taste of fruits but couldn't eat them all the time, so her rooms were filled with fresh fruits solely for the purpose of smelling their fragrance. Once the fruits went bad, they were quickly replaced with new ones. During every meal, the imperial kitchen would prepare hundreds of dishes for Cixi, but she often took only a single bite, and sometimes, she wouldn't even taste them at all. Towards the end of the Qing Dynasty, due to various indemnities and natural disasters, the country's finances were already in dire straits. The common people suffered, foreign powers were eyeing their territory, and they were also facing unprecedented historical changes. Yet, the well-dressed Cixi had no understanding or concern for all this. She only wanted to continue exploiting the people to maintain her extravagant lifestyle, truly deserving to be called a criminal of China. Rise and fall, prosperity and desolation, everything has turned to the dust of history. From the photographs left by the photographers, we see the sorrow and helplessness of history. The ancient city walls were like shackles, tightly bound to the Chinese people of that time, confining the progress of Chinese civilization. In the late Qing Dynasty, the glory of the Cixi and Qianlong reigns had long faded, and the country had reached its twilight years. The last few decades of the Qing Dynasty were the darkest moments in Chinese history. The precious images captured by Khan and his photography team made significant contributions to helping future generations understand the true face of that era, allowing people to see the real Qing Dynasty beyond the illusions portrayed in films and television dramas. This is History and Culture channel. Like and subscribe are the biggest help and support for us. Thank you everyone. See you next time.